Hi guys, here we
Hello, everybody.
are. Selena Rifkin here with Jason Douglas, and we got a couple things to go over today. But the big thing I want to talk about is yesterday I went to a protest that was about invasive water plants and the fact that the state wants to dump a chemical called diquat into the water to eliminate these plants. Jason showed up for a little while. He was pretty tired. So
He's fine. He's working.
yeah. It was like so this was at the state capitol. Um, we came across this, I came across this, it came across my feed, and it was a rapper, and it was, this thing was all it was all over X, it was all over Instagram, and someone organized a rally. And one of the people in our group said, "Oh, there's going to be a rally." And I was like, "Oh." And then I felt because this is how I make decisions, as I felt I should be there. So it was at 6 o'clock last night. And the reason it was such short notice, because I found out about this in the morning and then I went in the evening, was that they are planning to put this in the water right on Monday. They're going to start on Monday. So we have, I just sent something out on the mailing list that is a whole list of places that people that you can message and call, and the governor, who could, put a stop to this because he is the governor, is basically denying that he has any power over this whatsoever. So
Tell us a little bit about this Dicot stuff, though.
yeah, so what they want to do is they want to spray with diquat, which is a chemical that it's an herbicide. It is banned in Europe because they think it's too toxic over there. And their standards are, let's just say, their environmental standards are and health standards, they don't put up with a lot of the toxic crap that we do here. Um, so this thing's an herbicide.
Real head scratcher.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, yay. Um, and it's one of the most it's very, very toxic. One of the things that I was reading was that landscapers kind of call it the nuclear option. And another woman on my feed was like, "Oh yeah, I saw that on my, yeah, they used that on my thing." And it's like, yeah, all fish died. And it's very toxic for humans. Even a small amount to ingest it is deadly. So this is not a good thing that to put in there. So
Good.
what I want to do is, so I'm going to explain first. I want to explain what hydrilla is. Hydrilla is it's an invasive plant. We have a ton of invasive plants in Connecticut. This one happens to be a water plant. It's native to Asia, Africa, and Australia. And it came over in, we're going to blame Florida for this one. It was they were putting it in aquariums because putting plants in your aquariums is great for the fish. And somebody didn't like it, didn't like the performance, and just dumped it in the water.
Oh no, that's how it started, huh?
That's typical of how we end up with invasive species, though. It's extremely common. I mean, there's multiple ways how this happens, but that's how this one happened to happen. And it's basically spread through the United States, and we've got it in Connecticut now. They have it all the way up in Canada. Canada geese will spread it.
What kind of threat does it do? Like we didn't do anything about it.
Um, the issue with this invasive plant is the same with almost every invasive plant, is that they're so successful in this unfamiliar environment that they take over, and then nothing that would live in the native environment normally continues to grow. Now, there's a caveat to that, because invasive plants don't take over unless there is already a damaged environment. And we already have so many completely disturbed environments in this country. It's like anywhere they've scraped off the soil where so they can build something, that's
Yeah.
a disturbed environment. That is here's a place for invasives to take hold if you don't pay attention. So
Oh,
that's how they work, because they're very successful plants. Um, they actually have tried to, and the problem with spraying with herbicides is that when you spray any critter or plant with either an herbicide or you're talking pesticides, when you spray it, it's kind of like Darwin in action because any part of it that's a little bit just strong enough to resist the pesticide, if it's a bug, if you have one couple of surviving bugs, or a plant, a little bit of it survives, some of that root survived. Wow, now you have an herbicide resistant plant.
Goes back stronger, more
Or
resistant.
yes, it comes back resistant to that pesticide or the herbicide, depending on, if it's an insect, you have the same problem with insects. And insects breed really fast. So, and these plants are very successful. They grow very fast. So,
Isn't it also true that if there's like if we were to say leave it alone, the hydrella, right?
mhm.
That over time, like they may dominate it first, but that over time, that natural impulses would start to,
It's
happen,
gonna
and
get
eventually
competition.
the natural species of the area would,
Yes, and
balance
as
it
a
out.
matter of fact, that is one of the ways that we would consider dealing with it as an alternative to dumping dicot in the water.
Yeah, and
But
if it's in your yard, and if you have a thing on, if you have property on the river and you want to pay for yourself to go clean that crap out of the front of your riverbed, then you can do that, right?
well, I think we'll consider that this is water. It's kind of like spraying garbage in the air. It's one thing if you want to put it on your soil and kill your soil, but this is in water. You put
Right,
it in the water, it's not going to stay conveniently over the
right. It's going to go everywhere,
it's
right?
going to go everywhere. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm actually going to show
Interesting. So, I
that
mean, it would
I
just
ended up
seem
with
that
yesterday.
it would just seem that it doesn't, to me, doing anything doesn't seem necessary to me. I think it seems like it would fix itself, and or if you, like I said,
Well,
if you have
we can, we're going to
let's
talk
say you
about
have
that in a
property along the Connecticut River, because it
minute.
grows alongside of the river, correct?
No, it grows in the water. Here, let me play
Oh,
this.
in the water itself.
Yeah, this was the protest. Hang on.
Okay.
Are calling on the Department of Energy and
I
Environment
don't know if you guys can hear this,
to find a
hopefully.
new way
Yeah,
to
I can hear it,
the
Ellie.
invasive and highly transmissible strain of hydrilla, a water plant that is listed as a federal noxious weed. There are tons of invasive species in Connecticut. Why are they going after the hydrilla? According to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, hydrilla in Connecticut has spread throughout the Connecticut River into coves, tributaries, and boat basins. In a statement, Keith Hannon, project manager with the Army Corps of Engineers, says, while the Army Corps appreciates the interest in their efforts to combat the spread of hydrilla, the threat of the strain to the Connecticut River's natural ecology is real and can cause degradation of the river habitat and water quality and can harm native plants and animals. He also says the hydrilla can affect the local economy by losing water navigability and fishing, lowering property value and increasing flood risk. Hannon goes on to say dicot has gone through lab testing to protect public health and the environment, and these products have passed comprehensive EPA risk assessment processes for registration of aquatic use at both the state and federal level. In a statement, Will Healy, the Director of Communications with DEEP, says the department has regulations in place to ensure chemicals are used in ways that minimize risk to human health, the environment, and other species, and that they are working with the Army Corps to make sure all state laws and requirements are followed. But Rifkin believes there are better ways to deal with the hydrilla than to use dicot. There could have been educational campaigns about what this is. There could have been a call for volunteers to pull it out by hand. There could have been some kind of examination of the other possibilities for getting rid of it. It's
Okay, hang on. Let me come back here. Stop share.
So there you
Yeah,
go. Fox News, very good.
yeah. So, yeah, I just go with the flow. Um,
There are alternatives to there are alternatives. There's doing nothing. There's a pulling. So it
well,
grows from the bottom of the river. Does it grow from the bottom of the river? Is
yeah,
that
it
it?
does grow from the bottom of the river, but there are things that can be done about that. There's a couple of different things. So I have questions for these people. The first question is, consider that it's the Army Corps of Engineers that's dealing with this. What is the Army really good at? Blowing
Breaking
things
things
up,
and yeah, breaking things,
breaking things and blowing
taking
things up.
land, breaking things, killing
We're
people.
very happy that they can do that. And we're proud of our people that they're very skilled at this particular thing. But maybe this isn't a great application of their skills. Just saying. So that's
Not dicwad, at least. This stuff, that stuff is sounds. I saw a film earlier where they sprayed it down south somewhere, and like all the turtles died and turned up belly up.
Yeah, it kills. It does.
Kills everything.
Kills amphibians.
Anything. There's
Yeah.
no such thing as something that only kills one thing. So if you spill weed killer, it's killing everything there.
Yeah, yeah. It's
There's
not.
there isn't a single, like, weed killer is not a killer. It's a killer. Like
Yeah.
chlorine, for
Right.
instance,
Right.
kills everything it touches. Now chlorine in your pool, okay.
Yeah.
Chlorine shortens your life. Get natural pool cleaner. That's my little tip of the day.
All right. Good enough.
My point is, though, that this dicot stuff isn't just going to kill the hydrilla. It's going to kill everything in its sight. It's going to kill the fish. It's going to kill the turtle. It's going to kill you if you get too much of it.
Yeah, and it's not that these accidental poisonings haven't happened. It's not. This isn't something that's strange or unusual.
And you can't minimize its spread. That's ridiculous. You're putting it into water. You're putting it into a flowing water.
Well, it's, and this is like many invasive plants. One of the things that makes it very successful is even if a small part breaks off, it goes tumbling down the river. One of the things that I didn't have a chance to do because I just, limited time. I wanted to look at the list of places where this is getting sprayed, and I want to see, okay, so who lives nearby? What,
How they doing?
how much voting activity is going on there? Because
how many doctors' offices are going up in the area?
There's that too. So it's like it doesn't feel right to me, but not, I mean, the idea that this is somehow that's like, oh, they're making it better. And they always make these arguments about how it's gonna impact the economy. It could make home values go down. Okay. All right. Well, that's a big concern there, making home values go down. So that does really make me wonder what these locations were. So it's
what about the natural enemy of these? What there must be natural enemies of these places.
This is looking at what will take down invasives. It's a whole course of study now. And they don't have something specific for this, although I will say that ducks like to eat it. It's not their first choice, but just, brainstorming here. Now, somebody's going to think this is really stupid, but if ducks like to eat it, what if you corralled a bunch of ducks and you flipped their wings? So that's where they had to hang out. They had to eat the freaking hydrilla.
All right.
I mean, this is when you start looking for ideas. This
common
is
sense stuff.
Brainstorm. Does it sound stupid? Sure. But
back in 2000, I think 2008, when my kids were little, I was at Bolton Lake, and they had shut down the swimming there for a while in the summer because of an invasive species called an algae that was growing in the lake and taking over the lake.
Oh, yeah.
And shut it down. And Fox News came and interviewed me about it when I was sitting on the lifeguard chair. I said, I don't know, I'm just hanging out with the kids,
Right.
We kind of defied the rules.
Yeah, and the algae is another problem. But here's the thing. There are so many invasive species in Canada. It's like, all right, so we got the hydrilla. Great. I mean, that was my question. And people don't realize that, we have invasive species that some people may know what firebush is. The Latin name for it is what's also called winged euponymous. And that may be readers' vocabulary, so don't quote me. But it's firebush. It's that stuff that turns really bright, pretty pink in the fall, and people love it for their front lawns. Well, that stuff's naturalized all over Connecticut. And years ago, I was, when I still had my horse, we went for a trail ride, and there was this section of the trail where there was nothing there, and I mean nothing. It's like the ground is bare underneath it because the winged euponymous had completely taken over. These things will get tree sized, not full size trees, but like the size of a dog.
That's all there was. Yeah.
That was all there was. It's like, oh, this is a nice grove of trees. Awesome. And Japanese knotweed will do the same thing.
Yeah.
So
something stops them naturally eventually.
Well, again, this is because the area is disturbed. So here's how you deal with it on land. And this is how I'm dealing with it in my yard, because I had a huge patch of Japanese knotweed in my backyard. Now, for those of you who don't know what Japanese knotweed, it's a native plant. People often call it bamboo. It is not technically bamboo.
Got a snotty sounding name.
Sorry.
Annoying. Okay.
It's got heart-shaped leaves. There's two different varieties. The ones you see along the side of the road are usually, and you see it all over the place. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So, look it up. Maybe I'll find a picture and post it in the links or something like that. But there's the 8-foot kind and there's the 12-foot kind. I had the 12-foot kind in my backyard.
Yeah.
Stems were this big around. The roots go down, the roots can go down 6 feet into the ground. This particular plant evolved in Asia, and it evolved in a volcanic environment. These things will grow roots under lava. This is a really persistent plant.
Okay.
I started tearing it out. My friends, it's like everybody online was still on Facebook at the time, like, you're never gonna get rid of that stuff. It's always out. I'm like, you know what? That was the end of 2022, and I'm winning that battle.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I did was I covered the ground. I covered it with cardboard. So I'm slowly choking it out. And it requires attention. Yes, it requires attention. But the thing that frustrates me is that they would, in terms of spraying chemicals, it would be like, oh, well, they probably, and they didn't say that on the news, but how often would they say something like, oh, well, that's the most cost-effective solution?
Right.
Not long term, it's not, because now we just have more of these invasives, because all you've done is continued to create the situation where the invasive is actually going to be very comfortable. So the idea is you find plants that naturally live in that environment and put that, once you've killed off what's there, not with chemicals.
Right.
So there's this thing called, you can actually it's like an underwater blanket, and you put it over this stuff. And it's difficult to do in like it's not great for a full lake. But it's like smaller areas have been worked. And it's like, what if we did that? You did a combination of pulling, but that's going to require that.
Right. Death by 1,000 cuts of 4 or 5 little different natural things that work together.
Right. Yeah. You're working with nature instead of just, blanketing and killing everything in sight. And this is how I ended up going from a Democrat to a libertarian, was because of the environmental issues, because of what they spray on our food. And that is our food is the largest use of chemicals. It's like bigger than lawns, bigger than golf courses, and golf courses are no joke. Let me tell you, you don't want to live next to a golf course. There's recent studies that say you're more likely to get Parkinson's if you live by a golf course.
Oh, speaking of that, just for all of those of you watching this that follow golf, I shot 7 under par today.
Oh,
it was great. 7 under par. Bolton miniature golf. It was awesome. I had a great time. I just have to let golf fans know.
Well, my husband played golf.
Miniature golf.
I haven't seen how
I play real golf too, but
I have to see if he honored the Rifkin name. Yeah, and he usually does. He usually does a good job of that.
I'm a hacker.
Yeah. So,
anyway,
but I'm glad we don't live next to a golf course. So the thing that frustrated me was that not one word of the any environmentalist commentary said anything ever about what we spray and put on our food, about how we do farming. Yeah. There was never a word about that. And that was what broke my belief, my faith in that movement. Like this isn't about that. And
we're gonna have to do a couple of shows just about the food supply and Maha and the history of that and where we are now and whatnot. We've been talking to Kate Prokop, maybe we can get her on the show.
Yep.
She's really big in that.
You guys, I don't talk about this, but I actually have a master's in nutrition, which there was a point when I thought I was going to have a business doing that, but it didn't work out that way, and life happened. So, but
I'll say that people should know I'm a diabetic, and I'm doing it by natural nutrition.
Okay, there you go.
That's a whole nother story for a whole nother time.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to approach this health thing, but we don't. It's like having our food. It's like, oh, here, let's eat poison, and there are other ways to do this. There are way other ways to do this, and there's a whole conversation there. Absolutely.
Hershey today announced they were going to take all the artificial dyes out of their food today, and that's great news. But they're going to do it starting in 2027, which is great. But why not start
Now,
now,
they're all doing
or
that.
next week maybe, but like, why wait till 2027? I don't know.
Yeah, so
We're only gonna push in here for another year. Hey, all right.
yeah, that frustrates me too.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I get it. It does take
Better
time
than nothing, but
process, and they have to do some experimentation because they got to know what the
I'll
effect.
give them a couple months maybe. But I'll give you a couple of months. But
I know.
that's a year and a
Come
half
on,
from
guys,
now.
come on. We're used to a faster pace here.
Yeah, 2027 is a year and a half away still almost.
I know,
So,
I know. Crazy.
But anyway, I'm glad things are happening, and thank goodness for RFK. And that's all related to what we're talking about here, but with the hydrola, and because this is our environment is what we breathe, where we swim, what we
Yeah.
eat.
Yeah.
It does do with our economy as well.
Yeah.
You
Hey, you
know?
were talking about the plastic bottles earlier.
Yeah, so that's one of my problems with the Democrats. They were always known as the party of the environment, but yet you left the party for at least in part for that reason.
Yeah,
So
I left the party
and
because
why? Because they use environment for political reasons, not for really what matters, like global warming, for example. That's a whole nother topic we can get into.
right. Oh yeah.
So my understanding about that in a nutshell is, yeah, there's evidence that the climate of the Earth is changing, but there's no evidence that has anything to do with us, because history will show that the climate of the Earth has changed quite a bit over the last 6 billion years that it's been around. So, especially we have ice ages, we have periods of great warmth, we've had craters at
We
the.
are technically in an ice age.
We are technically I believe, coming out of an ice age still, right? We're working our way out.
We are.
We're going into one.
Yeah, we're actually in what's
They take place over. My understanding
but
is we coming out.
Fluctuates, but no, we're not necessarily.
It's like a 20,000 year.
Pause.
Isn't it like a 20 or 30,000 year cycle? A 20 or 30,000 year cycle.
Yeah, and it's
Right,
not
so-
predictable. They've never been able to predict those cycles.
So the thing about the hole in the ozone, right?
Yeah.
They found holes in the ozone later. They found holes in the ozone later at some point, right?
Yeah, we're all gonna die.
But why did they find holes in the ozone later? They found holes because they found the instruments to find the holes. In other words,
Right.
the instruments to find the holes weren't invented, so we have no way of knowing if those holes weren't there all along.
Right.
So these are the little catchy things that I've learned over the years that made me suspect the whole thing. And then what makes it worse is getting back to the water bottle issue. There are environmental concerns that are real.
Yeah.
That people should look into.
Yeah.
And one of them is all the little plastic water bottles that, did you know, my understanding is, now I haven't been there, but I'm told that in the Pacific Ocean,
We got to
we talked about this once before earlier in this week. There's an area in the
Are we
Northern
talking about the
Pacific.
Great Pacific Garbage Patch?
Yeah, that's mostly water bottles. It's about the size of Texas, I heard. It's almost.
Well, here's the thing about
What's the real story behind that?
How do we know that it's real? Does this sound like a conspiracy theory? Okay.
And we've got a helicopter. I'll take a ride. Let's find out.
Do you know how hard it is to get there? It's really hard to get there.
Yeah.
So it's like, find me a picture on. So what happened is like somebody said, oh yeah, there's this Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So if you go on Google Maps and you start looking around in the Pacific Ocean, I dare you to find this Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
All right.
Now, the answer to that was, oh, it's all floating a little bit below the water.
Is Google Maps going to necessarily find it, though? What about Google Earth? Isn't Google Earth?
Google Earth, yeah, Google Earth. Yeah,
okay.
I meant Google Earth. Yeah, I don't use Google. What do you want from me? So yeah, Google Earth. If you look on Google Earth, yes.
So are you saying it may not be a real story?
I'm saying that this was not a real story.
Okay.
I'm saying that this
so where maybe this real story is that there's enough garbage from these water bottles to fill the state of Texas. It's just not all in one place. It's just something that got twisted into that. Because I got to believe these a lot of water bottles. They got to be somewhere, right?
Yeah, well, it's first of all, is it really smart? I mean, it's like, oh, it's totally safe. How much plastic are we consuming by drinking out of plastic water bottles? And that's actually my bigger concern.
Right.
In terms of
little microplastics pieces that are in there. Right?
What the United States is putting, the garbage that United States is contributing to the world's oceans is like 1%.
That's true.
1%.
It's a world concern, though.
Yeah, it's a global concern, and it's poor countries. It's poor countries.
Right.
You know what would be great is, how about we get them some trash burning plants?
Yeah.
Since a lot of people are using poor countries as dumping grounds.
Right.
I mean,
that's true. Those little microplastic pieces that people don't realize are coming off the bottle when you're drinking them. Yeah. Messing up your system and causing heart attacks and strokes ultimately.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know about that because I haven't seen any specific studies on that, and there's question as to whether or not the microplastics are damaging or not.
Whether
Um,
they're passing, they're getting, whether they're getting in through or not, whether they're passing through or not, our system, I guess.
yeah, and I don't, again, but that's something that we shouldn't be assuming it's all fine.
No,
I
you have to
did
look into it and find out.
when I did my master's in nutrition, one of the things I was reading about was pesticides and and believe it or not, the libertarian argument about pesticides is like, oh, they've done all the studies. It's not nearly as bad as we think. And this is what pissed me off about the libertarians. It's like, oh, and let's genetically modify the plants because it's like as long as it's, this is going to make humans better. And here's the problem with the genetically modified plants is that we may or may not know that genetic modification is a problem, but they specifically modified these things so that they could survive having more herbicides sprayed on them. And we know that's not good.
That's ridiculous.
It is. Glyphosate will kill all the glyphosate, which is sprayed on every single wheat crop, unless it's organic, unless you're eating
Now,
organic bread.
just dumping right into this
Yeah,
dipot stuff without just jumping right to that.
Spray it on as a desiccant. They also use diquat as a desiccant. So this is like it's to dry out the crop so that they can harvest it faster. Because if your stuff gets rained on, then you
wait. So they're putting this diquat on the land that they're later growing our food on.
Oh yeah. Diquat, glyphosate. Glyphosate is actually another one.
Is it safe to say at this point that not only is the Connecticut state government not working in the best interest of the people, but quite frankly, working against the best interests of the people and only in the best interests of itself? That's what we have. You can't make this many bad decisions in every area.
I'm quite certain that there are some people in there who truly believe that they're doing the right thing and this is the way to go, and
they're being told that by somebody else.
This was the standard science forever. This is like from the time we were kids. This has been the viewpoint.
It's weird science at best and bad science at most, realistically.
But even when it's like, oh, when they say something has been tested, and it's like, all right, so how did they test it? We don't know that. It's like usually they're testing it on mice. That's pretty much standard. There's all sorts of reasons why that's sketchy, but the minimum is mice aren't human.
They're mammals, like they're mammals. That's about the common with us. That's about it.
So, and if you're talking how something affects amphibians, and amphibians bloody well matter to our environment. Amphibians are more sensitive than mammals are. But when you start talking about the testing, what they're not testing is, well, what happens if you have diquat and you've got glyphosate in your system too? What if you've got 2D4 in your system?
Well, just the whole concept of
they never test for these multiple interactions. They don't know. It's like
you shouldn't use this stuff at all. So here's what it is. Here's what really bugs me the most about the science part of this. They just play with our lives. They say, oh, the human body can take 1 part per million of this poison. Right. Fine, no problem.
Right.
When the reality of it is, if it's poison, we really shouldn't have it at all. And the 1 part millions, it means it's going to kill us only at a slower pace than what other things would. So they basically, and then they do it with all these different chemicals, not just diquat, right? But 1,000 other chemicals. And so aren't they then just bargaining with our health, the endurance of our health, of our bodies?
Yeah. When I did my master's for nutrition, I looked on it was the FDA website, and it was the USDA website, and I wanted to know how many, and this was 20 years ago that I did this. It was like, okay, so how many chemicals are approved for use on anything, crops? It was around 2005, so that was 20 years ago, and it was like 1,700 different chemicals.
These little 1 parts per million add up after a while.
Yeah, exactly. 1 parts per million add up after a while, and when you don't know,
when there's so many other substances that are natural, that are harmless, that can be used.
Well, yeah,
right? To solve most of these problems.
it's not
So
like our environment is free of poisons. I don't
doing
know.
it once and again, they're doing and this stuff, these chemical, these deadly chemicals are cheaper probably than the natural
Yeah.
cure.
Well,
Right.
they're also,
Generally speaking, they are.
well, how much of this is also
It's all about money again.
that it's back to money? It's like you want to talk about like ivermectin. There's no patent. Their patent expired on ivermectin, so companies can't make that much money on it.
Money is a
But
median of
they
its
keep developing. That was the other thing I looked at today, was that the FDA, they again there's like hundreds of new chemicals that they come up with every year that the FDA is looking at, the FDA and the USDA every year,
money.
because the chemical companies come up with this stuff. The drug companies do the same thing, where they develop a new chemical, whatever. Oh, what could we use this for? Quick, let's put a patent on it. And they put the patent on it before they even know what it's good for.
Right. So
Never
so
practice.
it's once again. I'm getting the big picture here. Money is the root of all evil again, and it's what's behind all of this. Money is just a medium of exchange. That's all.
Yes.
It was actually originally invented in the early ancient times in our earliest of history as just a way so that if you had apples and you wanted oranges, you didn't have to produce oranges to the orange producer. You could just
We've
get
had
the
many
oranges from other, right?
money.
And so that's all that money is supposed to be, and that's all that money really needs to be. And it's important to have a free market to exchange and use money. But people have turned certain people have turned it into an emotional love of money, and that's where all this comes from. And that's why
I think
ultimately,
it's also about, I think I think there's probably a hoarding aspect to that, but there's also how much of this is about power and the love of
more
power.
money, power is
Yeah, because
money is
you
the
can
road to
buy,
power, and
yeah,
power is
you
the
can
road to
buy
money.
influence with money.
So they work together, right? It is about power, and
Yeah.
so power and money they work together.
Yeah.
So there's so few people that would the people that would use power effectively and benevolently
Yeah.
are not the same type of people that would create it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that's our problem.
Yeah.
That's our biggest problem as human beings.
It is. Yeah. This is an us problem. We
Right.
all,
And we're always going to have fight this battle, but it's important that we keep doing it.
right. And this is like where it kind of gets into that spiritual aspect and the ethics aspect, is that um what stops you from being that person? Because Hitler and Stalin, and I was just writing an essay on this, is that my husband, we were on a group text, and he's Jewish, and one of the things he said was, the world would have been a much better place without Hitler. And I don't agree, because we all have the capacity to be that. And that's not something that's popular. I mean, if you think about, um, you
I don't
know,
feel like I could do what
that,
Hitler did myself. I don't think I have it in me.
well, here's the thing. It's like it creeps into the consciousness. Like
Hitler
what,
spent a lot of time in a really I believe he was in prison for a while,
yeah,
in the late 1920s, and had a real rough go for a while. Something embittered that man, and
yeah. I mean,
um, but
so what happened like, for example, in Russia, they had tens of thousands of people that died in the gulags.
yeah.
And in order to get to the gulag, it required people to the atmosphere, the culture of the time was report on your neighbor. So people were reporting on their neighbors, hoping that that meant that they would then not get arrested.
So these are the things that are a result of socialist policies and communist types of
Yeah.
policies that result in these types of, which are the things that the Democrats are more connected with these days, not the Republicans. Which today just leads me to those. I'm sure you're all aware today the big beautiful bill is passed. It's going to be signed by the
Mhm.
president tomorrow, and even though the bill isn't perfect, it prioritizes the people more than any bill that has ever been seen in my lifetime. And I haven't read the whole bill, but I've perused certain things and I've heard a lot about it. And Mike, what I want to say about it is Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, in his speech right before the bill was passed, knowing it was going to be passed, really admonished the other side of the aisle, the Democrats, about how that the nation was founded on the principles that you were born with your rights, that you were created with your rights, and that it was in God we trust, not the government we trust, And the
Mm,
sign right above the speaker's house in the chamber of the house says that. They
mm,
said Marxism, socialism are what makes the rest of the world, what makes, that we don't do that is what makes us great.
mhm.
And he just basically really let them have it. And what really, the most interesting thing about it is, I've been saying for years that the Democrats are slipping into Marxist philosophy. And it's
Oh,
taking only now until this year, really, and last year, where people are really starting to use that word.
hmm.
You know,
It was very unpopular for a while. It was
yeah,
like, what are you,
nobody wanted to
that's old
accuse the other side
fashioned,
of it.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, and the word communist is being used now. The mayor, this guy wants to run for mayor, is a communist, and
Mm,
uh, and I said before that's 60, 70 years ago, our grandfathers were fighting in Korea and in Vietnam, shooting communists to prevent those countries from turning into communist nations. Now we have a guy maybe becoming mayor of New York who's a communist. Things are heading in the wrong direction. We need to really stand up to this stuff. And what Mike Johnson today was really heroic was the first time I had heard those words used in the chamber of the House, the way
mhm.
they were used. And to say, he basically told them all,
Yep.
AOC was sitting there with the rest of them. All those, Rose Delore was over there. All these characters, Purple
So,
People Eater, you know, Joanna Hayes, we know that John DeBarros is running against. She was there,
mhm.
and he told them all,
Well,
"You're
what's
you're you're you're
interesting,
you're
have you
not
heard
your
of,
values are not American.
they're not.
Your Marxist values are been rejected by the people,
Mhm.
and basically cut the shit, move aside. No one's listening to you. It was awesome, really. It was
Jason,
awesome.
have you heard of Trevor Loudon?
I've heard of him. I don't really tell me about him.
Yeah, so he refers to himself as a communist hunter or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
He's written a number of books that document representatives, like government representatives, connections to communist parties, places like
Oh
Cuba,
yes,
and
okay.
sort of thing. So I did buy the one for Connecticut. And looks like all five of our current representatives have some ties to the Working Families Party, which is communist.
Which is a communist
The
party.
Connecticut, the
They like to
Connecticut.
disguise their words.
Yeah, yeah, it's not. No, they're
Yeah.
communist. Then it's or the Connecticut branch of the American Communist Party, or they have been to Cuba a few times, or they've said how wonderful Cuba is. So that's like he's got, it's like, okay, this one got an award from this one went to Cuba, this one that to Cuba. They said this, and that. And I think that we bashed McCarthy prematurely. And yeah, we definitely bashed
I've
McCarthy.
never disliked McCarthy.
Yeah. Oh, I grew up, he was an idiot.
Crazy man and all
Yeah,
this stuff.
crazy man. It's like, what are you talking about? That's like this is an example of how bad government can get. And I will tell you that there are a lot of people who are our age who still think that,
Yeah,
because that's what we got in school growing up.
right.
But by the Gulag Archipelago, which is how everybody finally found out how bad communism really was, because before that, the New York Times was singing their praises.
Yeah,
And so but the Gulag Archipelago got published in 1973. By that time, the Communist Party was already in our education system.
yeah, it was.
Yeah. So I
I
was,
grew up in high school. I was learning in high school all about how the only reason we have all this everything we have is because we stole it from the rest of the world. Not
wow,
because we're free, because we're
wow.
prosperous, but
I
because
didn't
we
even get
stole it from
that.
the
You're
rest
a
of the
little
world.
younger than me, but I didn't get that. But what I did get was deconstructionism, which is that's like it's like from an educational standpoint, it's like, okay, you're taking all of these pieces and you're tearing ideas apart and breaking them down. And that's the precursor to I mean, that's what Marx wanted.
The obedience.
Yeah. Well, it's like the thing is, once you tear all the ideas down, they never taught us how to put things back together.
No, I know. They
They
want
never
to tear down
taught us
your.
how to build things. That
They
was
don't
like,
want independent thinkers. They're going to tear down your independent thinking
no,
ability.
no,
And
they didn't. And I did have to read the Communist Manifesto when I was in
I
college.
read that as well.
Yep, that was
Relatively short. You should
required.
all read it. It's relatively short.
It was. Now I was blessed when I had some because my teacher he was a former communist and he had totally drunk the Kool-Aid, totally drunk it.
And then reform.
And then he realized it was bad. So as he had us reading this and he's talking about it, and he's giving us all the rhetoric, and he's like, he's got most of the class completely sucked in on how cool communism is, and
Yeah,
he spreads it. It was beautiful.
that's cool.
It was
Good way
amazing.
to teach. Yeah.
It was amazing. He was an incredible teacher. He really was. Yeah, you don't get that very often. So I'm like, I don't. Somebody loved me up there that sent me to his class because
That's good because,
yeah,
well, a lot of young people get communism, socialism is an easy thing to sell people. That's the problem with it.
it sounds so nice.
It's
It
each
sounds
to each according to his ability, and from each according to his ability, and to each according to his need.
Or what was I heard recently? It's like, well, communism is everybody's poor, capitalism is everybody's rich, socialism is anybody can be rich, but nobody should be poor. And it's like, that's not how it works.
Communism works. I mean, a socialism would only work if human nature was fundamentally different. So, in other words, if everybody was good,
different than communism.
it would work. It would work.
Called the Communist Manifesto.
I always bring up the Cinderella. I'll give you the Cinderella thing again.
Communism light.
Communist socialism would work it works for Cinderella's village because the king and the queen were really good, really nice. The king made sure everybody had what they needed.
Right.
And everybody lived happily under the king's little village in the Cinderella story, right? Right. That's where socialism works. But there's only one problem with it.
It's fairy tale.
It's a fairy tale. It's not real. So I guess what I'm saying is, in a small setting, if you have one benevolent ruler loves everybody, you can make it work in a household. In other words, socialism works in a household with a mom and dad rule the house and make sure the kids have what they need.
Right.
That's where socialism works. Okay.
Right.
Doesn't work in government. It will not work in government. And the only reason why, one reason why, is because 10% of the population are sociopaths, and those sociopaths work their way into government positions.
High, Jason. It is
that high. They're not all
high.
It is.
Deal with the worst of the worst, dude.
It's 10%. Now they're not all murder. Sociopath doesn't mean murderer.
Right. I know.
It just means sociopaths are just people that don't have empathy for other people.
Right.
They just think about their own interests, and that's it.
Seriously, I always heard it was 5. I didn't think it was 10.
Oh, I'm gonna give it 10. I've heard 10. 8 to 10. I've heard. So I rounded up to 10.
Statistics, buddy. I want proof. I want documentation.
We could get a poll. We can get a bunch of people. We could do candid camera experiments, but like stolen things, opportunity for people to steal. There's another thing. Crimes of opportunity. All right, if you ask somebody, will you go out of your way to commit a felony that hurts another person? Very few people would do that. It's like 3%. It's very small. But crime of opportunity. Oh, there's an opportunity to do something. I won't get that number goes way up.
I got a study I want to tell you about. So they surveyed at professors of ethics, and they found that an inordinate number of them would be happy to cheat. Like, they did these surveys anonymously, and I'm surprised that they even admitted to this, but apparently a ridiculous, like 60% of them, and these were university.
Cheat on what? On their exam or on their wife?
What?
Cheat on what? Their exam or their wife?
Maybe either. Yeah, I gotta dig that one out, but it's just damned embarrassing. It's like, oh my God, you're professors of ethics, give me a break. So yeah, I gotta dig that one out. I gotta start like having actual statistics if I'm gonna babble here.
And speaking of that, we need to do it. We're gonna do I'm working on content to do a show with a couple of UConn students on here, a couple of college students on here.
Neato.
Talk about what's going on campuses and how professors are, behaving like royalty and things like that. So taking vacations on the school's money and things. We had one get arrested by that just last year. A UConn professor got arrested for doing that.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Remember $30,000 extravagant vacation, not just a cheap vacation, but a $30,000 vacation.
My God.
Yeah, you can go anywhere for $30,000 for a week. Let me tell you right now, anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like, for some of us, that's pretty close to our actual income for the year.
Another thing is human nature. I'm going to give you a little analogy. When I was a kid, I was a good kid. I didn't break any major rules, but when I was a kid, I used to do what I wanted to do, like most kids, right? Rebelled a little bit. And one of the things I
our
used to
generation
do,
was we were the free range generation. So
one of the things I used to do is sneak out in the middle of the night when
I never
everyone
did
went to
that.
bed.
That's on the
Oh,
second.
we used to call them the laters. Me and my friends will tell you from Vernon. We didn't do anything. We would go down to Dunkin' Donuts, which is about 2 miles from our house. Where there's a nice lady there that used to make the donuts, and the leftover ones from the night before, she'd let us eat them. There were free donuts at Dunkin' Donuts, and we do things like ride around our bikes, and nothing harmful. Just being out in the middle of the night. And what happened though? They wanted to get out of the house, right? So the first couple of times, I remember the first couple of times we did it, we were very, very, very slow and deliberate about trying to get out. It took us 20 minutes to get from my bedroom out the front door with the slightest sound. And as we did it more and more and got away with it, get a little bit more careful, a little bit quicker about it, a little more,
Right.
sort of overconfident about it.
Right.
Until, of course, one night we banged a chair. Ooh, okay, it's okay, let's keep going. So one night we were out on Route 30. I remember, I never forget it, in Vernon, and we're walking down. And we used to, like, cars would go by, we kind of hide because we knew we weren't supposed to be out in the middle of the night.
Right. Yeah.
We were like 14, 13 years old.
Right.
And one night we kind of saw some car coming, and it was my mother's car. I was like, oh no, busted, right? So I say that because that's what we have here in politics. We have a government that picks away at the people, does a little bit more. As more and more people flood into the government and do more and more things to violate your rights, it starts off benevolent and good, and little by little it gets more and more abusive. And as people sit back and just let the government get away with it, and the media takes over and doesn't tell the full story, and people just take it for granted and show up in groups of 5 or 10 people at major protests instead of 1,000 people, and just sit blasé, and the government just gets away with more and more and more, and gets more and more brazen about what it does, and cares less concerned about if your parents wake up while you're sneaking out of the night. The people wake up while you're spraying Dicot, and while you're putting people like John Flynn in jail in prison and doping them up with drugs with no process and things like that. And more and more, but the good news is eventually the parents are going to wake up. The people need to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Wake up to what's going on in Connecticut, and I have seen the big beautiful bill passed today, and the nation celebrating Donald Trump and the rise of MAGA around the nation. Connecticut's missing out.
Yeah.
Gas prices at a 4-year low. Are you kidding me? I'm driving around Connecticut. Our gas prices are not a 4-year low at all.
Someone posted.
Our eggs are still, a lot of our stores, our eggs are still $7.99, $9.99. I
Yeah,
thought the egg problem was solved.
Where's that money going? Where's it going? They just I just saw an interview with it was like a clip of an interview. They were interviewing Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was talking about how in the state there was just so much money that was just going down the drain. And we see what was going on with USAID. And now thank God that's done. But oh God, it was one of
So many good things are happening.
one of Rubio's people was doing an interview, and she said 90% of the money that we were sending overseas wasn't actually getting to the places where it was intended to go. It was getting stuck in bureaucracy, or it was like
worse.
Chelsea Clinton's wedding or whatever the hell.
Or going to some of that money ended up in groups that were supporting Hamas and stuff like that.
Yes. Buying
or actual enemies. I mean,
what was it? They were buying condoms for Hamas or something like that.
Oh, they were doing condoms for some kind of Indian Planned Parenthood. It was connected with Hamas. The money from that was going to Hamas.
Yeah.
And
then
there was
they were doing it was
Lesbian Sesame Street or something.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I was like, really?
So listen, what's behind this gay pride thing, right? This woke thing.
Yeah.
They play it off as gay rights or whatever. So there's always been gay rights. They've been around for a long time. It's been quite a while in America that most of us, the very vast majority of us, are accepting of the fact that some people have different sexual orientation. Right. That's fine. Right. It's really not a big issue. No one's telling them they can't go into restaurants or anything like that. But they're turning it into a civil rights issue as an illusion.
Yeah, it is.
What they're really doing is just espousing yet another Marxist way of destroying families. And that's by confusing kids.
Yeah. It's called queer theory.
Right. Queer theory. Right. By imposing on everybody, making young people question their sexuality as much as possible, thereby disconnecting them from their families
Yeah.
and causing more rift because they understand there is a natural rift between teenagers and parents, as we all know. You're exploiting that and trying to tear into that as an attempt to tear apart the fabric of the family, and therefore, and also dehumanize us. No men and women, just
Right.
people, just
Well,
us.
yeah, and I mean, there's a whole depopulation thing going on too,
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
disgusting.
right.
So it's good to see that's being what happened with Pennsylvania, the University of Pennsylvania stepping up and
Mm-hmm.
seemingly doing the right thing.
Yeah, well, Trump harassed the hell out of them, as I understand it.
We all need some harassment.
Yeah. So that's, yeah, I mean, that's good. But we still have, when I was at the, when we were at the, so the people who organized this protest yesterday were
Yeah.
definitely not
Oh yeah,
on the
interesting.
right side of the aisle. They were
More lefties over there.
definitely organized by creative lefty types. And honestly, these have been my people for most of, it's like once I discovered the creative hippies, I was all in.
It's an issue for both parties, this diclot
But
stuff.
the environmentalism is for both parties. But a reason I bring this up is because Jonathan's wife is a nurse, and she was chatting with one of these guys, and she was talking about how, you know, what transition surgery actually is, which is they are removing your breast if you're female, or they're
Yeah.
removing your penis if you're a boy.
As a teenager, it's
Yeah, and
unbelievable.
so what this guy said is like, oh, that doesn't happen. And I've heard that so many times. And so my husband has been, he converses, he was trying to, he had a friend who was on the, on the far left, and he'd say, well, what about this and this? Oh, that's not happening.
Yeah.
And I'm like, um okay, how do you convince somebody that something horrible is happening when they really, really, really don't want to believe it?
People don't want to believe these things.
Don't. And
Same problem we had
my
with
own
Ben
cousin,
Proto.
I have a cousin, and he's my age, and his son has decided to be a girl. And I sent him a letter, and I sent him a bunch of links with, detransitioners talking about this, and some of it was like fairly brutal stuff. Didn't want anything to do with it. He wrote back. He said, we trust our doctors. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I honestly, I don't know what to do with that. And it frustrates the hell out
I'll
of me.
tell you, when I used to hear the word expert, I would think, oh, they must know. Until I was about 35. And ever since
And I
then,
think
I hear the word expert and I think they don't know what they're talking about.
well, I mean, that's, in some ways that is also a benefit to people who are into, the ideology that says they want to tear everything down. I mean, that's what it says in the Communist
I
Manifesto.
can't think that any surgeon or any
Wants to
doctor.
tear everything down. But what happened after that? Oh, magical communism. So there's this South Park episode, because we watched South Park for years. And so there were these
Oh,
things
that
called
show
the
very
underwear
well.
gnomes. And so the underwear gnomes would like steal your underwear.
Yeah, I remember the
And
underwear homes. Yeah.
and then, oh yeah, I wish we could pull up a clip of that one. Yes, and the underwear gnomes, and they're like, and Stan is like, why are you stealing all this underwear? And they're like, well, we're gonna make a profit. He's like, how? Steal underwear, make profit. It's like they never had any plan, and this is what communists are like.
This is how we got to step up. This is how we got to step up the show. We'll
Yeah.
have a little clip of the underwear gnomes ready to go.
Yeah, I know. Well, this was a bit spontaneous.
It was fun. Yeah, I remember that. But yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so it's like, so it's like, okay, so you tear everything down and then everything's magically communist. Human nature suddenly changes. Oh, okay. All right. So
The young people of New York City and young people in general that are being lured into the idea of socialism.
Yeah, no, they are.
They should know one thing.
A lot of them are
The one thing they should
that
know:
way.
in order for you to get anything for free, somebody else has to be forced to produce it for nothing.
Yeah, yeah, that includes free healthcare.
That includes free anything. Right? Your rights are verbs; they're not nouns.
Hmm.
You don't have a right to a house or a car.
Right.
You don't have a right to healthcare. It's up to you to do that.
The thing that kills me about socialism is that it negates responsibility. It's like suddenly you're not responsible for anything. Everyone else is responsible for you. But
Right.
what happens to your responsibility?
What about the poor people who are these people that are responsible for everybody else if it's not you?
Yeah, right.
So
So,
what's their lot in life?
but in the process of taking away responsibility, it also takes away your ability to believe that you can do anything. It disempowers people. It weakens us as humans. Did you know that Marx was a really awful person?
Yeah,
That I don't I just so I've been reading an
I've heard he was a bad guy. Yeah, he was a bad
oh, and
dude.
he was also disgusting. Like, and I
Yeah.
mean literally disgusting. He was horrible to his wife. He was verbally abusive. The dude never bathed, and he would get boiled.
Literally disgusting like that. So.
Literally disgusting. Like
Oh
he
wow.
never bathed. He didn't believe in bathing. He would get boils on his body.
Oh,
And his wife referred to him as like multiple people referred to him as like demonic or satanic.
oh, jeez.
His wife referred to him as my demon. Um, and it might seem, trivial, but he was a really messed up guy. I'm going to put it in the show notes. But there's a really great biography of him that was written recently. And yeah, it's just like, oh dear God. It's like he was not a good person. He was not a good person.
Shame on moderate Democrats for letting their party get taken over by these radicals. Why not step up and do it?
Yeah.
There's
I
got to
mean,
be more of us than there are of them. In even within
yeah,
the ranks of the Democratic Party, there's got to be. You know
yeah.
what? We have the same problem here in Connecticut with our own Republican Party, though, don't
We
we?
do. We
We do.
absolutely do. Yeah, it's like, yeah, we've let it get taken over. And I get it.
Fear breeds fear.
Yeah, well, and then people, there are people who have grown up here, like yourself, and then people come here to make money because there was a lot of business here, used to
We're
be.
getting it back little by little.
Yeah,
We got to
well,
put these Marxist pundits and we got to build another alligator Alcatraz for these people. No, I'm
well,
serious. People like
what do we have in Connecticut?
like
Copper.
Adam Schiff is one of the worst. You know, Chris Murphy, guys like that. There's two. There's basically a very small number at the top.
Mhm.
Jeffries, guys like that. AOC that know that this stuff is bad. They know this stuff is bad.
Yeah.
They
Well,
know it's bad. They're
they,
not fooled by it. They're just trying to lure you in.
yeah. Well,
And
they
then, of course, there's all the dummies that are being lured in.
yeah.
Those are the ones I want to help.
Mm.
And I want alligator Alcatraz for the small number at the top. That's how we got to handle this thing. It's not going to go away on its own. But thanks to the big, beautiful bill, thanks to Donald Trump, we're getting it back. Selena and I and John Anderson, the rest of us, we got a really good group of people that are working on doing it here in Connecticut. We got now 2 people that have stepped up to do data entry. Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. That's going to start coming together. So it's building our foundation. And yeah, there's a lot going on. So I'm real pleased about that. And it's good because
I've actually got several reports that I need to include for people who have gone to their local RTCs and told me what's going on. We got somebody from Norwalk.
right.
The person I sent to you for data entry is from Danbury. And
Okay. Town of my birth.
Yep. So yeah, so we've got a couple of different town reports now that we can start filling in some data. So that's coming.
Great. That's coming. Yeah, now we got data entry people.
Yep.
That's coming. That's all coming. Yeah. We
So,
have the districts already out there. So you need me to send them to you again? I will.
but I'm going to tell you how to do it. You're going to do it yourself.
Oh, right. Well,
What, am I your secretary?
Me and my
Am
new
I your
data entry.
secretary?
Me and my new data.
Careful.
Secretary of the Navy, Secretary of the Army. Hey, no.
Right. Well, I would be okay with being secretary for whatever we come up with here, which so I've written out the plan. It's on like what we had, to share with people. That's going to be on the newsletter. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, ctcommonsense.substack.com. Go there. It's always in the show notes.
And of course, we're on YouTube now. Hello, YouTube, everybody.
Yes, we're on YouTube now too. So we're on Rumble and YouTube, and we're gonna
Facebook, we've been posting.
So I was figured out how to share a screen today, and we're gonna figure out how to do this live thing. I don't know how to do it yet, so
We'll get to it.
we'll get to it. So
All right.
are we there
today?
Are we there? Yeah, I think we're there.
We're there for today.
So
Okay.
we got so next week we've got two guests coming on. We have somebody who's going to talk about Linda, who's going to talk about the voting situation.
Voter integrity.
Voter integrity. She's going to be talking about voter integrity.
Yeah.
We're going to keep working on that because we're not getting anywhere unless we get the votes in good shape.
Counted properly.
Yeah, and then Thursday we're going to have Chris Lancia, who is running for the 3rd district against Rosa DeLauro. He's going to come. He's going to come on again.
He's the purple people-headed eater. Take down Rosa DeLauro, bad woman.
Yeah, I think he probably would enjoy spraying. I think he'd prefer to like keep her at a distance and spray some herbicide on her. But no, he's a good person. He wouldn't actually do that. That's a joke.
No, we're joking. We don't want to spray diclot on her. We don't.
Yeah,
We don't want to do that to her. We do want her out of Washington. We want her out of Washington, though. She's not representing the people. We want her out of there.
Yeah, because she's not representing us, and her district is in really bad shape, and I'm sure Chris will be happy to talk about that.
I'm sure he will.
So, all right.
With that, we will say goodbye. God bless America. God bless Connecticut.
And we'll see you guys
next time around.
Tuesday. All right.
Tuesday. Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Happy 4th of July. Absolutely.
Hello. Make America great again. 249th anniversary.
I'll get the hat today. Good. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.